The RNC has come to a close. Donald Trump has officially accepted the nomination for president. One contrast we noted between the Dems convention and the RNC was the RNC, while they shilled for a lot of normal corporate economic policy, they did feature a lot of working class Americans making that case as convention speakers.
Right, and as friend of the show Chuck Rocha tweeted, if Democrats dismiss the importance of voter outreach with workers and Latinos, the loss of these groups will cut into the margins come November. Former senior advisor to the Sanders Campaign, author of T.O. Bernie, Chuck Rocha, he joins us now to discuss how Democrats might be able to change their message to gain the Latino vote and the impact of what we saw during the RNC. Good to see you, Chuck.
Good to be here.
So, Chuck, tell us a little bit expand a bit on your tweet, which is what was the message that you were trying to convey about why the message might be dangerous, so to speak, to Democrats? What was effective about it? Just expand on that.
Let me lay the groundwork. Donald Trump only needs to do a few things to secure re-election. And with the Latino vote in particular, he needs to skim out between 4% and 8% support in Arizona, North Carolina, and Florida. If he can do that in those three states, carry those three states, which he would do if he took that percentage off the top, then he is re-elected. So everybody's watching this convention and going, oh, my God, there's no way he's wrong on this issue. He's wrong on that. He's just baiting this. He's just brown coating that. That's all good and fine. You can clutch your pearls and drink your wine and worry about all of that stuff. But what I'm getting at here is that it's working. And it don't have to work with all of us. It don't have to work with the majority of us. Just a few Latino men who want to kind of like Donald Trump. When you're doing this every day and every night, now let me be clear. There are no undecided Latino voters watching the RNC or, in that matter of a fact, covering or watching the DNC. But the next morning, they're reading their newspaper, and in the evening, they're watching their local news or Jorge Ramos, the coverage of that convention. During the DNC convention, Latinos saw, Democrat Latino activists are upset because there's no Latino representation at the convention. At the RNC convention, the headline literally says, we're naturalizing people to make them U.S. citizens. Like it's the narrative that worries me to death.
Yeah, well, and talk a little bit more about that. I mean, what was it specifically? Because you said you've looked at the focus groups, and people may not want to admit it, but some of this is going to land. What specifically do you think that lands, and what did you see in those focus groups that gives you cause for concern?
Look, it almost hurts my heart to say this, but this is just the cold, hard truth from an old Mexican redneck strategist. I've sat in room after room all summer long and watched Latino men who are not as woke and hippie as we would all like to think they are, hello, D.C. and New York brown bubbles. So people outside in the real world, they kind of want to hear this about law and order. They want to hear stuff about the other things that are going on with the messaging about listening to us, having real people deliver these messages, to your point, Crystal, about the working class brown and black people speaking at this conventions. Now, for all of my Democratic friends, you're right. He's wrong on all the issues. You're right. He will not win a majority of the vote. But if he moves 3% of black voters and 5% of Latino voters, he's reelected. And we need to own up that we have a problem by talking to some of these working class black and brown people with the Democratic Party and what the issues that they really care about.
Yeah, it's kind of amazing, Chuck, that that disconnect isn't seen. I mean, I guess I'm kind of happy about it. But, I mean, where and what states, because you're talking about, this is something really very few people understand. Marginal differences of 10 to 15% in the black vote actually changes the entire electoral map. Same with Latino voters. I think a 10% increase would dramatically, that means like New Jersey becomes in play, right? So what states in particular are you looking at which could be that tipping point if Democrats don't get their act together here?
So it starts with the first three I mentioned, North Carolina, Arizona, and Florida. But don't sleep on two other states that are super duper important for opposite reasons that this morning I'm super salty about because I'm worried. One is Nevada. Nevada, where we've always been a strong point. We're going to win Nevada. All these Democratic operatives, we've got Nevada in the bag. No, we don't. And the culinary union out there, which is our Democratic powerhouse, is 89% laid off right now because people aren't working on the Strip. I'm worried about the grassroots infrastructure on the ground where Bernie Sanders won 73% of that Latino vote. There's a real problem there. And Wisconsin this morning, with everything that's going on in Wisconsin, people don't realize that there's a whole ton of working class Latinos on the south side of Milwaukee who are watching all of this. And I'm worried nobody is talking to these voters where they're at. And this morning it gives gives me as a Democrat concern. I'm trying to raise the alarm bells to donors and institutions to say, look, we got to spend this money. If I proved one thing with Bernie Sanders, if you'll go out and spend money and work like I described very, very much in detail in the book on how to do this work, you can move voters, even for Bernie Sanders. Can you imagine what you could do if it was Kamala Harris delivering that message, the daughter of an immigrant, set all of the policies to the side, but just delivering a narrative and having a conversation?
Yes.
Well, and talk about that. So on the one hand, you're saying some of what was done at the RNC is going to land to some extent. What was the missed opportunity at the DNC? I mean, how would you have, who else would you have included? What sort of messaging would you have included? How would you structure that in a different way so that it may have landed more effectively?
It's very simple. It was the same strategy I wrote in T.O. Bernie with what we did with Bernie Sanders. You put real people's face in telling real stories. I would have had a DACA recipient go on stage and talk about what DACA has meant to them, who've been educated in this country, who's went to college in this country, who's now working in this country. I'd have taken a laid off worker that's a Latina in Nevada, in Las Vegas, and put her on stage talking about how coronavirus and this president's lack of whatever he hasn't done or taking it seriously has done to her and her family. I would have taken a Latino from Milwaukee, from the neighborhood I just described, and talk about why everybody needs health care, and health care should be a human right, and why right now I just lost my job, so I just lost my health care. These real stories and real narratives is how we got the vote with Bernie Sanders. I did not use Bernie Sanders to win any of the vote that we got. I used real stories. Here's a groundbreaking thing for you. The closing ad for Bernie Sanders in the primary did not have Bernie Sanders in it. It had a whole group of working class Latinos and Latinas, and it was oriented by, all the voiceover was done by DACA recipients. This is what I'm saying. The strategy behind this is really strategic about what they're doing at the RNC. They're wrong on all of these issues, but this is a show. If this race was about policy, Donald Trump wouldn't have got elected last time because he put policy on a red hat and got elected. I'm just telling all you Democrats now, we've got to put emotion back in this thing with real stories and real people.
Yep, very well said, Chuck. Thanks for joining us, man. But where can everybody get the book?
TOBernieBook.com. Thank you for all your support. It's going great right now. And you want to get inside the campaign, read this book.
All right.
All right, Chuck. Thank you so much. Great to see you.
Thank you.
Be good.
Next on Rising, to debate or not to debate, that is apparently the question for Biden. You might be surprised. Who says that he should not? Team Rising is going to have their takes on that when Rising continues.